I think I've pushed all the right buttons. Good morning, UUFLB. It's great to have you all here again on another wonderful Sunday morning. Hopefully you can see me. It's been a beautiful weekend that we had, or a week we had last week. Yesterday was a day when we experienced 2 seasons in one 24-hour period. So hopefully today you're cuddled up in front of your computer or your mobile device, maybe wrapped in a warm blanket with a hot beverage in hand, but that's the beauty of being able to gather in this way in a virtual space. So we're glad that you're with us here today. You know, November is a time when we often get together with friends and family to have a special meal to feed our bodies. So today, let's take the next hour to feed our spirits with some wonderful music, some specially spoken words, and some time of fellowship. So give me just a second. I'll share my screen and we'll get the slides up so that you can follow along during the service. So welcome to this congregation, where for over half a century, we've been seeking to foster community, to grow our spirits, to serve others, and to work for justice. We are very glad that you have joined us this morning in our sacred cyberspace and hope that here you will experience love, acceptance, and inspiration. After our service, please feel welcome to stick around for fellowship and conversation. Our monthly Touchstone theme for the entire year is repairing the world. And for the month of November, the topic is nonviolence. Going back to Thoreau on our Unitarian side and the Reverend Aidan Ballou on the Universalist side, there's been an abiding appreciation for the importance of nonviolent resistance in our UU congregations. A commitment to nonviolence is essential to oppose and subvert a culture of violence that is so damaging. Nonviolence is an essential tool in the work to repair the world. We are very fortunate to have Mark Bernstein with us again this morning. Mark has been a faithful member of the UU Church of Delaware County for nearly 28 years. He's a former staff member of the Central East region of the UUA and currently works as adjunct staff for the region, providing training and consultative services to congregations. And we're so very fortunate that he considers UUFLB to be his second spiritual home. The topic of his message for us this morning is A Night Already Devoid of Stars. Violence has been and continues to be a stain that has darkened the landscape of our country and our world. Join us as he explores what has caused us to become such a violent society and answer the question, how do we, as Unitarian Universalists, respond in ways that affirm our beliefs and principles? So now, let us enter into worship together. As always, we begin our service with a musical prelude, but let me pause for just a moment to express gratitude, because gratitude is so much a theme of this month as well. Gratitude for our very talented musician, Avi Wisnia. Now, Avi records his music for us each Sunday, so he's not always with us in person, but I was reminded this morning that it's Avi Wisnia's birthday today. So let's send out a very spiritual happy birthday as he leads us in song with a popular song that is an important call to action.
Good morning. We begin with a song by Yusuf, formerly known as Cat Stevens, his song Peace Train. And feel free to make a peace train at home or wherever you are this morning by dancing around your living room or taking a little stroll around the block. And we're going to sing together this song. Now I've been happy lately, thinking about the good things to come, and I believe it could be something good has begun. Oh, I've been smiling lately, dreaming about the world as one, and I believe it could be someday it's going to come. 'Cause out on the edge of darkness, there rides the peace train. Oh, peace train, take this country, come take me home again. Now I've been smiling lately, thinking about the good things to come, and I believe it could be something good has begun. Oh, peace train sounding loudly, ride on the peace train. Ooh-ah-hee-ah, ooh-ah, come on the peace train. Peace train, holy roller, everyone jump on the peace train. Ooh-ah-hee-ah, ooh-ah, come on the peace train. Now get your bags together, go bring your good friends too, because it's getting nearer, it soon will be with you. Now come and join the living, it's not so far from you, and it's getting nearer, soon it will all be true. Peace train sounding louder, ride on the peace train. Ooh-ah-hee-ah, ooh-ah, come on the peace train. Peace train, holy roller, everyone jump on the peace train. Ooh-ah-hee-ah, ooh-ah, come on the peace train. Ooh-ah-hee-ah, ooh-ah, come on the peace train. Now I've been crying lately, thinking about the world as it is. Why must we go on hating? Why can't we live in bliss? 'Cause out on the edge of darkness, there rides the peace train. Oh, peace train, take this country, come take me home again. Yes, peace train sounding louder, ride on the peace train. Ooh-ah-hee-ah, ooh-ah, come on the peace train. A peace train, holy roller, everyone jump on the peace train. Ooh-ah-hee-ah, ooh-ah, come on the peace train. Ooh-ah-hee-ah, ooh-ah, come on the peace train. Ooh-ah-hee-ah, ooh-ah, come on the peace train, the peace train. Ooh-ah-hee-ah, ooh-ah, come on the peace train.
Thank you, Avi. We are so very grateful for your talent and how much you are willing to share that with us. And we wish you a very special day for your birthday today. So now let's continue in our service with lighting the chalice. And speak these words with me. Let there be light. Let it shine in dark places, in moments of pain, in times of grief, in the darkness of hatred, violence, oppression, where there is discouragement and despair. Wherever darkness is to be put to flight, let there be light. Our opening words are very appropriately by Martin Luther King Jr. Nonviolence is absolute commitment to the way of love. Love is not emotional bash. It is not empty sentimentalism. It is the active outpouring of one's whole being into the being of another. And now Bechtel brings us a very interesting message for all ages.
Good morning. My name is Bechtel, and our story for all ages today is called Something Happened in Our Town, a child's story about racial injustice, written by Marianne Solano, Marietta Collins, and Ann Hazard, illustrated by Jennifer Zavoyne. Something bad happened in our town. The news was on the TV, the radio, and the internet. The grown-ups didn't think the kids knew about it, but the kids in Miss Garcia's class heard some older kids talking about it, and they had questions. After school, Emma asked her mother, "Why did the police shoot that man?" "It was a mistake," said her mother. "I feel sad for the man and his family." "Yes, the police thought he had a gun," said her father. "It wasn't a mistake," said her sister Liz. "The cops shot him because he was Black." Emma was confused. "He's brown, not Black," she said. "Some Black people have dark brown skin and some have light brown skin," Emma's father explained. "Black usually means African American. Most of their ancestors were brought here from Africa as slaves." "I know what a slave is," said Emma. "That's when you have to do what the other person says." Yes, slaves had to do whatever white people told them to do. Even after slavery ended, white people didn't let Black people live where they wanted, go to school with white people, or vote. Who are white people? White people came here from places in Europe or Russia or other countries. We are white, even though our skin is light tan. "Did our family do those bad things a long time ago?" asked Emma. "Yes," answered her mother. "Back then, many white people thought that they were better than Black people, even though it wasn't true." Liz added, "Some white people still think most Black men and boys are dangerous, even though they're not." "Was the man that got shot dangerous?" asked Emma. "No," said her mother. "Shooting him was a mistake. It was a mistake that is part of a pattern." "Like the pattern on my blanket?" asked Emma. "Yes, but this pattern is being nice to white people and mean to Black people. It's an unfair pattern." "Suppose you had a birthday party and invited everyone in your class, except the Black kids," said her mother. "How would the Black kids feel?" "They would be sad," Emma said, "or mad. And you would be missing out because you never know who's going to be your best friend," said Liz. "And you can't help others to be fair," said her mother. "Like telling Anna to stop teasing Ling about her name," said Emma. Her mother gave her a hug. "Yes, just like that." In another house, Josh asked his mother, "Can police go to jail?" "Yes," said his mother. "Why do you ask?" "The white policeman who shot the Black man," said Josh. "Will he go to jail?" "What he did was wrong," said his mother. "But he won't go to jail," said his father. "Why not?" asked Josh. "Cops stick up for each other," said Josh's brother Malcolm, "and they don't like Black men." Josh was confused. "Why not? Some police are Black." "You're right," said his mother. "Uncle James is a police officer, and so is my friend Kenya. There are many cops, Black and white, who make good choices," said his father, "but we can't always count on them to do what's right." Malcolm added, "I could get stopped by the police just because I'm Black, even if I don't do anything wrong." "That's not fair," said Josh. "What if it was a white man in the car? Would the police have shot him?" "They probably wouldn't have even stopped the car," said his father. "Sometimes white people are treated better than Black people," said his mother. "But it's not right. Everybody should be treated fairly." Josh's mother gave him a hug. "We're proud of who we are." Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King, and Nelson Mandela were strong and brave Black leaders. They showed us that we can stand up for our rights and set good examples for others. They were treated unfairly, but helped others learn to be more fair. "Some people haven't learned yet," said his father angrily. "Why are you mad?" asked Josh. "I'm mad that we're still treated poorly sometimes, but I can use my anger to make things better," said his father. "Black people have a lot of power if we work together to make changes." "I have power," Josh said, "and I'm smart." His father smiled. "You're right." His mother added, "And you can change people's hearts by sticking up for someone who is not treated fairly." "Like how Malcolm sticks up for me when the kids tease me about my glasses?" Josh asks. He tells them to step off. "Just like that," his parents said. The next day, a new kid joined Emma and Josh's class. His name was Ahmad, and he was from a country far away. Ahmad didn't know where to sit or what to do because it was his first day in school. He talked a little bit, but it was hard to understand him. He said he was learning English. After lunch, the class went outside to play soccer. Daniel and Sophia picked kids to be on their teams. All of the kids were picked to be on a team except Ahmad. Daniel said Ahmad probably didn't know how to play because he was so new, and Sophia said Ahmad might not be good at soccer. Josh remembered what his mother said about sticking up for people who are treated unfairly, and Emma remembered what her mother said about unfair patterns and birthday parties. All of a sudden, Ahmad wasn't alone. Emma and Josh were leading him onto their team. We have enough kids on our team, Daniel said. We don't need him. But Josh was ready. Step off, he said. He's playing. Yeah, said Emma. We don't want to miss out.
Thanks, Beck, for that thoughtful selection of a story that reminds us of our long history and the continuing bias that exists in our society and what each of us can do to make a difference and not miss out. And now for a musical interlude, Avi has selected a song by Ben Harper. And I was reminded that last week there was an expression that maybe we could provide words so those of us who like to sing could sing along with the music. And while we haven't actually tackled that technical problem, you'll be happy to hear that Avi has selected a song that has a very repetitive refrain. So for those of you who wish to sing, I'm sure you'll pick it up and join right in. And for those of you who might be a little timid, I remind you that we're all still muted. So feel free to join in.
We can change the world with our own two hands, make it a better place with our own two hands, make it a kinder place with our own two hands, with our own two hands. We can make peace on earth with our own two hands. We can clean up the earth with our own two hands. We can reach out to you with our own two hands, with our own two hands, with our own two hands. Make it a brighter place. We're gonna make it a safer place. We're gonna help the human race with our own two hands. We can hold each other with our own two hands. We can comfort each other with our own two hands. 'Cause you know you've got to use your own two hands. Use your own two hands. With our own two hands. We're gonna make it a brighter place. We're gonna make it a safer place. We're gonna help the human race with our own two hands. With our own two hands. With our own two hands. With our own two hands.
What a great song that reminds us of all the many different ways that we can make a difference. So at this time, I would like to invite Mark Bernstein to join us with a reading. Mark?
Thank you, Karen. Good morning, everyone. It's again so nice to be back with you. This morning's reading is from Reverend Patricia Hortdorfer. Our faith demands our service in promoting and creating communities of peace, love, and justice for all. Our faith calls us to treat others with justice, equality, and compassion, while we work to create environments locally and globally that lend themselves to modeling liberty, peace, and justice in human interactions. Our faith calls us to act in ways that foster well-being in ourselves and others by doing no harm and acting responsibly to create communities and institutions that are safe and nonviolent. Finally, our faith calls us to be courageous and committed leaders in the ongoing search for truth and meaning, spiritual freedom, and ethical responsibility. So ends the reading.
Thank you, Mark, for those inspiring words, and we look forward to hearing your message today. But at this time, let's take a moment to share our gifts through our split plate offering. Our split plate recipient for the month of November is the League of Women Voters of Bucks County, which never supports or opposes candidates for office or political parties. Elections and voting are core concerns for the League of Women Voters, which is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Please give generously, and you can do so through our links in the e-newsletter or on our website, or you're always welcome to mail a check to the UUFLB offices. And we thank you again for your generosity. And now I'd like to introduce Mark again with his message.
Thank you, Karen. I know, the theme for this month is nonviolence. But being the contrarian that I am, I chose for this sermon to talk about violence, because you can't address the issue of nonviolence without talking about the evil, the violence that is out there. So that's what I chose to talk about this morning. And fair warning, a lot of what I'm going to share with you is hard to hear. You might say that this sermon is rated R for mature audiences. Violence has been an immense variable throughout our lives, regardless of what era our childhoods occurred in. Violence is all over the place, and it consistently has been in every generation. And if you don't believe me, here's an example. According to the World Report on Violence and Health, authored by the World Health Organization, each year, over 1.6 million people worldwide lose their lives to violence. Violence is among the leading causes of death for people aged 15 to 44 worldwide, accounting for 14% of deaths among males and 7% of deaths among females. Moreover, for every person who dies as the result of violence, many more are injured and suffer from a range of physical, sexual, reproductive, and mental health problems. Violence also places a massive burden on national economies, costing countries billions of US dollars each year in healthcare, law enforcement, and lost productivity. Now, here's the thing. This report was issued in the year 2000, over 20 years ago. Violence isn't new. It's just gotten better press over the years. If we are not victims of violence, and thankfully that is the case for most of us, we are constantly exposed to it, whether in our neighborhoods, on our televisions, or in our online or old-fashioned newspaper reading. The statistics are startling. Between 2012 and 2016, approximately 98,000 people were wounded each year as a result of a firearm. That's 268 people a day. During this same period, there were approximately 35,000 gun-related deaths, 22,000 were suicides, and 13,000 were victims of homicide. In another study between 2008 and 2017, over 340,000 people were killed by a gunshot, meaning that one person was shot dead every 15 minutes across the United States. Since 1963, nearly 193,000 children and teens have been killed with guns on American soil. More than 4 times the number of US soldiers killed in action in the Vietnam, Persian Gulf, Afghanistan, and Iraq wars combined. And in 2021, deaths from gun violence increased by 23% compared to the year before. If you think this is difficult to hear, imagine how difficult it is to read it. Statistics from other forms of violence in our society are just as frightening. Since the introduction of social media platforms, online violence, particularly against women, has been on the rise. Online violence manifests itself in many ways: harassment, bullying, misinformation, defamation, and publishing private information, a process called doxing. About 4 in 10 Americans have experienced some form of online harassment. And of the total number of women who have been victims of online violence, over 61% have experienced that online violence multiple times. Domestic violence is rampant in our society. FBI researchers estimate that 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys are sexually abused before they turn 16. And that 75 to 95% of these abused children are victimized by someone they know: a sibling, parent, step-parent, cousin, uncle or aunt, grandparent, neighbor, or teacher. The National Clearinghouse on Child Abuse and Neglect reports that over 3 million incidents of abuse were reported in the United States in 2015. As shocking as this number is, the total number of children and youth involved in these reported incidents is closer to 5 million. And the US Department of Health and Human Services estimates that 6 million more incidents go unreported each year. In the previous decade alone, our country has experienced the shock and horror of mass shootings over and over again. Horrifying attacks at the Boston Marathon, a nightclub in Orlando, Florida, a Walmart in El Paso, Texas, a movie theater in Aurora, Colorado, an historic Black church in Charleston, South Carolina, a country music festival in Las Vegas, Nevada. School shootings at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, and so many others, too many others. The numbers are almost unfathomable. They speak to a society, to a culture that so often seems to be completely out of control. A culture where anti-Semitic, anti-Asian, and anti-gay acts of violence are on the rise, where violence against Indigenous people and people of color, particularly Black people, is so prevalent. And as a result of the policies and rhetoric of the previous Trump administration, our political world has, in some cases, literally become a battlefield. We are still recovering from the insurrection on the Capitol of the United States last January. Lawmakers who defy their party, and particularly Trump, are subjected to harassment and death threats. In school board meetings and political rallies, we see violence played out in words and sometimes in deeds. Reports of Nazi salutes at school board meetings and emails threatening rape. Obscenities have been hurled or burned into people's lawns with weed spray. At a conservative rally in Western Idaho last month, a young man stepped up to a microphone to ask when he could start killing Democrats, to the applause of the audience. The local state representative, a Republican, called it, quote, a fair question. And as we struggle to comprehend all this, we also struggle as a society to understand its causes. Violence in our culture is fed by multiple forces: the disintegration of family life, media influences, the continued prevalence of substance abuse, the easy availability of weapons, the rise of gangs and increasing youth violence, the economic inequality that has left 10.5% of the people in this country in the throes of poverty. 10.5%. Many studies cite the influence of television, social media, and video games as a major contributor to violence in our society. Worldwide, the average child watches over 3 hours of television every day, and these programs contain both physical and non-physical aggression at the rate of about 3 violent acts per minute. These programs are punctuated with television advertisements, approximately 13% of which also contain violent content. At the same time, children are also exposed to violence in movies and video games, as well as in popular music and music videos that include violent lyrics and imagery. Two prominent researchers in this area, Brad Bushman and L. Roel Hoosman, make the argument that the relation between viewing TV violence and aggressive behavior is about as strong as the relation between smoking and cancer, or between studying and academic grades. They contend that when we see violence, the violence is then activated in memory and actually guides our subsequent thinking and behavior in more aggressive ways. In addition, many people who are exposed to violent images also become desensitized to violence. As one sees more and more violence over time, one becomes habituated to it, such that subsequent exposures produce fewer and fewer negative emotional responses. In the end, many people begin to see violence as a normal part of everyday life, and they become accepting of it. Violence, it seems, begets more violence. As Martin Luther King wrote, returning violence for violence multiplies violence, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. In the face of these daunting and haunting statistics, what are we as Unitarian Universalists to do? We begin, I believe, by looking inward, by critically examining our spiritual community and ensuring that we are creating environments where we can all feel respected and loved. The Reverend Patricia Hortdorfer, quoted in this morning's reading, writes this: "We are a country born in violence and continually formed in violence. The violence of conquest, colonization, conversion, and civilization. The microcosm of American culture and history is reflected in the microcosm of faith communities and Unitarian Universalist congregations. This violent culture has entered our lives, our communities, and our congregations. Over my 13 plus years of working with congregations, I have seen how the seeds of conflict and disintegration of community life have been sown by power struggles or turf issues or opposing views on everything from the quality of the coffee to whether we use the word God or not in our worship services. While this doesn't lead to outright violence, it does speak to the establishment of environments where unruly behavior is tolerated, where interpersonal conflict is rampant, where people do not feel safe. Again, the words of Reverend Hortdorfer. Congregational discussions often take on violent language and heated rhetoric inappropriate for a faith community. If this disrespectful, uncivil behavior is not confronted and addressed, it becomes accepted and condoned. Until all relationships, she writes, between young and old, Black and white, gay and straight, rich and poor, liberal and conservative, can be respectful and healthy, none of us is safe. While a faith community cannot guarantee the safety of every person, Reverend Hortdorfer urges our congregations to take responsibility for reducing the risks and eliminating the circumstances that lead to harm. Ministers, she writes, are bound by their calling, and lay leaders are bound by their covenant to lead faithfully and guard the safety of the congregation for all members. And while we look inward, we must continue to look outward. We must ask ourselves individually and collectively, are we doing all we can to stem this overwhelming tide of violence, injustice, and discrimination? Are we actively engaged in our communities, representing our faith through our humane and decent acts of compassion? And if we are not doing that, are we at least raising our voices constantly and tirelessly in protest of those institutions and practices that perpetuate this cycle of violence in our homes, our communities, and the wider world? The author and activist Arundhati Roy wrote this: "The trouble is that once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you've seen it, keeping quiet, saying nothing, becomes as political an act as speaking out. There's no innocence. Either way, you're accountable." Keeping quiet, doing nothing simply is not an option for a faith that proclaims our respect for the inherent worth and dignity of all people, and that holds up as one of our pillars respect for the interdependence of all existence of which we are a part. And the Reverend Dr. Paul Razor adds this: Unitarian Universalists are fully aware of the profound evil we face today, including unnecessary human suffering and destructive systemic structures such as racism, sexism, homophobia, and violence. Yet none of these are inevitable. None of these are inevitable. He writes, religious liberals live with hope, grounded in the belief that the world can be nudged toward the good. Our choices matter. We can either enable or ignore the evil around us, or we can help overcome it. Now, more than ever, as we begin to emerge from the tunnel that has kept us physically apart for so long, we as Unitarian Universalists must dedicate ourselves once again to serve as a force for good in the world. Our message of love and peace is an important one and should ring out as loudly as we are able to do so. The beloved and eminent UU theologian, Rebecca Parker, puts it more eloquently than I could. Writing almost 20 years ago, but still as relevant today, she says this: what we do in this time must be done in communion, deeply rooted in our relationship to one another and to those who have gone before us, who, when the forces of injustice were at their strongest, had the courage to stand against the tide and against all odds. We are to proclaim what is moral, what is just, what reverences life, what gives hope in the face of violence, what restores life when it has been fractured by human cruelty, what is worthy of our ultimate loyalty, what sustains us in the long night of pain, what connects us in right relationship to our neighbor, what saves the world. 6 years ago, I left my full-time position as staff of the Central East region of the UUA. The person who took my place was the Reverend Hope Johnson. The former minister of UU congregations in the New York metropolitan area. Hope was the living embodiment of peace and justice, and yes, hope for a better tomorrow. This month is the first anniversary of her passing. And she is so sorely missed by so many. So it is appropriate for me that I conclude this message with a quote from Hope. Responding after the church shooting in Sutherland Springs, Texas, which left 26 people dead, including an unborn child, and 22 others wounded, Hope wrote this: I know how important it is for us to allow our grief-filled hearts to invite faith, hope, and love to seep in, drop by precious drop. Allow our hearts to guide us in coming together once again, as often as we must, to claim that we will not let fear dictate the kind of people that we are and will be, in spite of the anger, the tears, and the fears. Allow us to be the people who know how to respond. Yes, once again, by uniting our actions, our hearts, and our minds in love. Allow us to remember as we work with the larger world, our congregations, and each other, that we are part of a team doing the work that we have each been called to do. So may it be. Thank you for listening, friends.
Thank you, Mark, for that sobering message, for reminding us each of what we can and should be doing, and for sharing the words of your precious colleague. And now, let us lift one another up as we listen to the joys and sorrows of this fellowship. If you wish to share, go to your Zoom controls and click on reactions, and then you can raise your electronic hand and we'll help you to unmute so that you can share. But if you like to stay low tech, Sherry and Gil are out there scanning the gallery, so you can just wave your hand and we'll verbally recognize you and also help you to express yourself. But in everyone's interest, please be brief. Would anyone like to share? Sometimes it takes a moment for people to.
Gloria is waving her hand.
Who is that, Sherry?
Gloria, you can unmute. Gloria?
Oh, well.
All right. right.
I'm sure she'll be
I
able
think
to
I
say
got, did
something.
I get it now? I think I got it.
Yeah.
I just want to say that I cannot attend the look-see at the new building today because of my family being in Philadelphia watching Hamilton. So that's why I won't be there.
We'll miss you.
But if somebody could take photos of it and send them to me, I would love it. You know, on the email. That would be
Yeah,
appreciated.
we could do that. Gil and I can do that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Gil and Sherry.
I think Colleen has her hand up.
Go ahead, Colleen. Yep, there you go.
Hello, here I am. This is my first time raising my hand and unmuting. I just wanted to say that a couple weeks ago, after Chris Ermer shared the story of the young girl that was shot at the football game and killed, I went online and there's 330 million Americans and there's like 990 million firearms. So when you do the math, it's very unsettling. And I just wanted to share that so people can reflect. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen.
I did have a joy. This is Sherry. And Gil has a joy, I would imagine. Yesterday was a milestone birthday for Mr. Gil. And we had a wonderful day, a wonderful celebration.
Every day above ground is a good day.
Happy birthday to Gil.
I don't see any other waving hands.
All right, I'm sure we'll talk about it more, but Gloria reminded us of the opportunity to go by and see that space that's being looked at. So I'm sure we'll get some additional details when we get to the fellowship hour. But before we move to that, let's take a moment, whether or not you shared today. If yours was a sorrow, we hope that you feel our compassion. If yours was a joy, know that we are celebrating with you. But for all the joys and sorrows out there, spoken or unspoken, let us take just a moment to pause in gratitude and to give a silent meditation or prayer. So now as we close our service, Avi has selected a hymn that you'll be familiar with. Again, it has a very repetitive refrain. So for those of you who wish to sing along, do please join in.
Please join me in singing hymn number 100, I've Got Peace Like a River, and we will do 4 verses of the hymn. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul.
There, that gives you some energy to finish your day. So now let's close our service with the extinguishing of the chalice. And read these words with me. When we take fire from our chalice, it does not become less, it becomes more. And so we extinguish our chalice, but we take its light and warmth with us, multiplying their power by all of our lives and sharing it with the world. That concludes our service. Let us continue in fellowship.